Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for joining in with us today. My name is Stacy. I'll be your moderator for today's session. Our title for today is Tick Bites, Meat Allergy, and Caring for Livestock, What Farmers and Ranchers Need to Know. Hopefully this is what you were looking for to learn more about today. Before we get started, we put this up in front of all of our webinars. I don't expect this to be an issue. This is something we do before every single webinar. We just want to make sure that our time together is positive and productive. We ask that participants maintain professional and civil discourse throughout each webinar. We encourage you to consider views that differ from your own with an open mind and to respond to differences in opinion respectfully. I work for a national nonprofit called AgriSafe. We are a group of people who care about how farmers, ranchers, fishers, foresters, do their job and do it safely and come home at the end of the day to go back to their families and all the other activities that they want to be doing. We work with rural healthcare professionals who provide care to farmers and ranchers. We establish partnerships with other similar organizations and try to make sure that we are giving you the most accurate and up-to-date information about the risks and challenges of working in agriculture. One of the ways that we do this is a podcast. It's called Talking Total Farmer Health. It's really easy listens. They're about 20 minutes. They cover a variety of topics that impact people who are working in ag. Lots of different ideas and perspectives that you'll hear there. I encourage you to check that out wherever you listen to your podcasts. And then AgriSafe, as I mentioned, we have webinars, we have on-demand trainings, lots of different things that you can do with us. If you want to learn more about agricultural safety and health, I encourage you to check out our website. You can join our contact list, donate, become a member, lots of different things you can do to get engaged with us. We will record today's session, and that recording will go in our learning lab. You can see the address for that right here. Easier to remember, learning.agrisafe.org will take you to that place, and usually we can get our recordings up within about 24 hours. So look for it tomorrow. If you want to come back and listen again, or if you want to share it with other people, you do need to take out a profile. It's really quick. We just need to verify that we're interacting with real people, but it's free. So don't have to be a member. You can come in and get the training and information that you're looking for. Yeah, ask for evaluation and feedback after every one of our trainings, and we'd love to hear from you about your experience today. When you go back to the Learning Lab, click on this course and today's training. When we mark you complete, you'll be able to fill out the evaluation and then download a certificate for your participation for your own records. So we'd love to hear from you. All right, I get to kick off the introductions today. Sharon Forsyth is here with us. She's the Executive Director of the Alpha-Gal Alliance, creator of the Alpha-Gal Information website and founder of the Alpha-Gal Alliance and co-founder of Alpha-Gal Alliance Action Fund. Both Sharon and her husband have alpha-gal syndrome. Thank you very much, Sharon, for being here with us today. And then two other introductions quick. Candace Mathis and Debbie Nichols, founders of two Alpha-Gals and the Alpha-Gal Foundation, are dedicated to helping individuals navigate life with alpha-gal syndrome without sacrificing joy. Through their personal experiences and commitment to community building, they provide valuable resources and support for those affected by this condition. Thank you for joining, to all of you, and you'll see other video and faces on here. You're going to hear from everyone later, but I'm only introducing those three as we get started today. Sharon's going to kick it off, so I will stop sharing my slides. Sharon, please go ahead and pull yours up.
Just a second. So, hey everybody. Stacy, thank you so much for inviting us to do this webinar today. And thanks to everybody who showed up to participate. We're really excited to be here today to talk to you about this important issue. So I'm going to talk to you about alpha-gal syndrome, and then I'm going to touch on a few specific risks that it poses to farmers and ranchers. And then finally, I will share a few ways that you can try to avoid getting this condition by avoiding the tick bites that cause it. So what is alpha-gal syndrome, or AGS as we sometimes call it? It's an unusually severe allergy to a sugar, but this is not the kind of sugar that you put in your coffee. It's a very special sugar called galactose alpha-1,3 galactose. That's a bit of a mouthful, but luckily it's got a nickname, which is alpha-gal. And sometimes we also call the condition alpha-gal for short. So if I do that during my presentation, don't get confused. Alpha-gal syndrome is caused by tick bites. In the US, it's usually caused by Lone Star ticks. And as you can see from this map here of alpha-gal syndrome cases, the majority of cases occur in areas where there are a lot of Lone Star ticks. But it's important to understand that many other ticks all over the world can cause this condition, including a few other ticks here in the US. So what is alpha-gal found in? It's found in most mammals, including cows, goats, pigs, sheep, and cats and dogs, and all other non-primate mammals. With one exception, gal-safe pigs. These are very special pigs that have been genetically modified so that they don't make alpha-gal, and people with alpha-gal syndrome can eat these pigs. So alpha-gal is also found in products made from mammals and products made with ingredients from mammals, including foods, drugs and medical devices, personal care products, and household products. So how does alpha-gal syndrome work? Well, it starts with a tick bite, but you don't wake up the next day allergic to alpha-gal. It actually takes weeks or months for the allergy to develop. If you've had a lot of tick bites, it can happen a little bit faster, but it usually takes at least 6 weeks. Then you get an alpha-gal exposure, which would usually be like you ate a hamburger or a steak, but maybe you ate some dairy products or you took a medication that contains alpha-gal. And then weeks to months, then hours later, you develop a reaction. And we will talk more about these reactions in a bit. So alpha-gal syndrome is not your grandmother's allergy. It's really weird and different from typical food allergies in some ways that are important to understand. So with regular typical food allergies, we don't know the cause. In the case of alpha-gal syndrome, we know it's caused by tick bites. Typical food allergies usually start in childhood. Alpha-gal syndrome usually starts in adulthood. And we're seeing more and more kids who are developing alpha-gal, but it's still mostly adults. Typical food allergy reactions happen quickly, right after you eat the food. Alpha-gal syndrome reactions are delayed by 2 to 10 hours. And then typical food allergy reactions happen every time. Alpha-gal syndrome reactions for some people only happen sometimes. So if you're one of these folks, you might eat a hamburger every day for a month and never have a reaction, and then eat a hamburger and have a severe reaction that puts you in the hospital. Because just because you don't react every time does not necessarily mean you have a mild version of this allergy. And then typical allergies tend to cause typical allergy symptoms like hives and swelling. And we often get these symptoms too, but in some cases, people get alpha-gal syndrome that mimics IBS or arthritis with no hives or other allergic symptoms at all. Nothing that would make you think it was an allergy. So as you can imagine, these characteristics make alpha-gal difficult to diagnose, and there are a lot of people who have this condition who don't know they have it. Another weird thing about alpha-gal reactions are very influenced by cofactors, and cofactors are things that make allergic reactions worse, like alcohol, exercise, and NSAID drugs like Advil or Aleve. And some people with alpha-gal only react when a cofactor is involved. So if you're one of these folks, you might be able to eat a hamburger and not react. But if you eat a hamburger and drink a beer at the same time or go for a run afterwards, you might have a severe life-threatening reaction. So what do people with alpha-gal syndrome react to? Lots of foods and drinks, like mammal meats, like, oops, I'm not sure if you guys are seeing that, like beef, pork, lamb, etc. And organs from mammals like liver, kidneys, etc. Like these organs can actually contain more alpha-gal than the muscle meats. And then many of us react to milk and dairy products. We can react to foods made with gelatin and foods made with many other ingredients derived from mammals. And you often don't know that they came from a mammal because they have a weird name like mono or diglycerides, or maybe you recognize the name of the ingredient like vitamin D3, but you don't know that it came from a mammal. So this is a big problem for us. And then we can react to foods and drinks made with carrageenan. And carrageenan doesn't come from a mammal, it comes from red algae. But these algae, like mammals, also make alpha-gal. And if you're really sensitive to alpha-gal, you might react to foods and drinks processed or treated with mammal ingredients or carrageenan. And this is really problematic because that covers just about every kind of food you can imagine, including many of the foods that we think of as our safe foods. All right, drugs and medical devices. It's important to understand that unlike other food allergies, alpha-gal syndrome is also a major drug allergy. 75% of us have reacted to a medication, and 50% of us have had a severe life-threatening reaction to a medication. Some medical products are even more dangerous for us than any food. Most famously, the cancer drug cetuximab, which has killed a number of people with alpha-gal syndrome. Personal care and household products, not a problem for everybody, but a giant pain if you're one of those folks. So I want to talk about livestock exposures because this is particularly important for farmers and ranchers. So obviously cows, pigs, goats, and sheep are mammals, and you don't need to eat a mammal to react to one. Of all the livestock exposures, fluids seem to be the most dangerous. For example, amniotic fluid. If you're helping with calving and you get amniotic fluid all over you, you could have a severe life-threatening reaction. And the same is true for blood. For example, if you're processing carcasses or have some other kind of blood exposure and you get blood all over you, you could have a severe reaction. I know of a case of a hunter who was processing a deer carcass and had a blood exposure, and it actually killed them. So take these exposures seriously. You need to protect yourself. And then saliva, like if your cow licks you or something. I mostly hear about topical reactions like hives or swelling from these saliva exposures. And then there are other exposures that can cause reactions, exposures to waste, exposure to from contact with animals, like during milking or touching the fur of animals. Fume reactions, fumes from the waste or the animals themselves. People with alpha-gal tend to react to airborne exposures. And then products used in livestock care, especially the balms that farmers put on the udders of milking cows when they contain lanolin, because lanolin, of course, is from sheep's wool. Alpha-gal syndrome can cause all the usual symptoms of allergy. I'm not going to get into all of these today because you can find them anywhere on the internet. But remember that in the case of alpha-gal, our reactions are usually, not always, but usually delayed. And also, they don't always happen every time. So same symptoms, a little bit different presentation. And then there's some really weird alpha-gal symptoms. For example, itching or swelling of the palms or the soles of the feet. This is often our first symptom that lets us know that we have a serious reaction coming on. And then there's the GI variant of alpha-gal syndrome. With this variant, you get GI symptoms only, no hives or any other classic allergic symptoms, which would let you know that you're experiencing an allergy. Instead, you get abdominal pain, diarrhea, and other IBS symptoms, or some combination of those. And as you can imagine, even though we think this might very well be the most common form of alpha-gal syndrome, it's very rarely diagnosed correctly. People are often initially diagnosed with IBS, sometimes IBD. They often have their gallbladders taken out. You wouldn't believe how many people in our community have had their gallbladder unnecessarily removed, including Debbie, who's going to talk to you later. And kids can get any type of alpha-gal syndrome, but there is a particular presentation that you all should be aware of because it's common. And with this presentation, the kids only have abdominal pain, only during exercise, often during sports practice, and only after eating certain foods. So maybe they do okay with pork and other alpha-gal containing foods, but they react after eating beef, or maybe they just react after eating pork. And then alpha-gal can cause joint pains. Some people only get joint pain, and this is my husband's primary symptom. He had crippling arthritis until he was diagnosed and changed his diet. And it's important to understand alpha-gal can cause severe life-threatening reactions called anaphylaxis. And in fact, 75% of us get these reactions, which is more than a higher percentage than any other food allergy, even peanut allergy. Alpha-gal causes so much anaphylaxis that in high prevalence areas where there's a lot of it, it could be the #1 cause of anaphylaxis in adults. And you can see from this study in Tennessee, where they looked at all the cases of anaphylaxis at their clinic, alpha-gal can cause more anaphylaxis in adults than all other food allergies combined. Cardiac symptoms. Some people with alpha-gal only get cardiac symptoms. And 30 to 40% of us have these cardiac symptoms during anaphylaxis that are related to a drop in blood pressure. And this is probably because alpha-gal tends to affect adults, and adults simply don't have the cardiac resilience of children. This can lead to heart attack, and it's not uncommon to meet people in our community who've had a heart attack as a result of an alpha-gal reaction. Sometimes it's the first symptom. So if you have alpha-gal, please learn to recognize the symptoms of anaphylaxis and what to do if you experience it. I don't have time to do that today, but you can take this course. It's really good and it only takes 30 minutes. So about now, you may be saying, oh my gosh, how do I know if I have this crazy thing? First of all, have you had a tick bite? If you haven't had a tick bite, it's not likely you have alpha-gal syndrome. If you did have a tick bite, did you get an itchy reaction that maybe lasted days or weeks or even longer? If you did, it doesn't mean that you will develop alpha-gal syndrome, but you're more likely to. If you didn't get an itchy reaction, you're much less likely to develop alpha-gal. Did you get bites like these, particularly on your ankles or in your groin area? People see bites like this and they say, oh, triggers got me, because they don't usually see what caused the bites. But these are not trigger bites. These are classic larval Lone Star tick bites. And if you get these larval tick bites, you're more likely to develop alpha-gal syndrome. But keep in mind, half the time, people don't notice tick bites. So if you are working or spending time outdoors in areas where there's ticks, don't rule out the possibility of alpha-gal just because you don't remember the tick bite. You could still have it. The most obvious clue of all is if you react, if you eat red meat and then hours later you react. However, people don't often connect the consumption of alpha-gal containing foods with their reactions. And that's because of these delays, because we might not react every time, and because we may only react during exercise or when we drink alcohol. So there's another important clue, and that's, are you reacting in the middle of the night? Are you getting hives, swelling, your throat's closing, or maybe you have severe abdominal pain or other GI symptoms in the middle of the night? If you've had a tick bite and you experience this, you absolutely need to get tested for alpha-gal, because other food allergies do not cause reactions hours later in the middle of the night. It's alpha-gal that does that. Another clue: did you develop new GI symptoms or new joint symptoms weeks or months after having a tick bite? If you did, get checked out. And how do you do that? How is alpha-gal syndrome diagnosed? Well, you need to make an appointment with a doctor, and I strongly recommend that you find an allergist. They should order the alpha-gal IgE blood test. This is the test for alpha-gal. But remember, it's not like a pregnancy test. So if you don't have symptoms, don't get the test, because many people who test positive do not actually have the allergy. You have to have a clinical history consistent with alpha-gal, which means you have reacted to alpha-gal. Step number 3, change your diet and see if your symptoms improve. This is especially important if you have the joint symptoms or the GI symptoms, because so many things can cause that. So if you've gone on an alpha-gal free diet for a couple of months and your symptoms haven't improved, you better rule out other things. So here's a few tests I don't recommend. Skin prick tests are great for other allergies, but they're not reliable for alpha-gal syndrome. They tend to be negative. The alpha-gal panel includes a bunch of tests that are rarely needed, and the results of which can confuse both patients and doctors. And then finally, alpha-galactosidase is a test for Fabry disease. It sounds like alpha-gal, but it's got absolutely nothing to do with it. All right, so why is alpha-gal syndrome a growing threat? As you can see, the estimated number of cases has grown exponentially. And this is partly because before, neither the general public nor doctors knew a thing about alpha-gal. So these days, more people are getting diagnosed. But it's not the only reason. The other reason is that Lone Star tick populations are exploding. And Lone Star ticks are spreading farther north and farther west than they've been before. And this is causing a huge increase in alpha-gal syndrome cases, to the point where alpha-gal syndrome is the 10th most common food allergy nationally, but in these high prevalence areas, it's even more common. So around now, you're thinking like, I would rather not get this thing. How do I avoid getting bitten by a Lone Star tick? And if you already have alpha-gal, you care even more about this, because new tick bites might make alpha-gal syndrome worse. There are a lot of tick bite avoidance tips out there on the internet, but most of these were designed for black-leg ticks. And Lone Star ticks are different from black-leg ticks, and those tips don't always work. So I'm going to be talking about tips that work for Lone Star ticks. So you need to understand that just as alpha-gal syndrome is not your grandmother's allergy, Lone Star ticks are not your grandmother's tick. A Lone Star tick is more like a cross between a lentil and a velociraptor. They're aggressive. They are fast, and they will detect you and hunt you. And their babies are different too. They have these tiny little tick larvae. For most ticks, they don't bite humans, or if they do bite you, you get a handful of bites. But Lone Star tick larvae gather in tick bombs, and these are congregations of hundreds to thousands of tick larvae. And when you brush up against some vegetation that has these tick bombs on it, they will all come off on your clothing. And yeah, this person was hit by 3 larval tick bombs. You can see how many ticks that is. This can result in hundreds to thousands of bites. And multiple bites are more likely to cause alpha-gal syndrome. So we think it's often these larval tick bites that lead to alpha-gal syndrome. You don't usually see them if you get bitten, like I told you before, but like if you do see them, they're super tiny. They look kind of like red dust or brown sugar. So tips, it's important that you start thinking about tick bite prevention before you leave home. Permethrin-treated clothing, shoes, and gear is the single best way to avoid Lone Star tick bites. If you leave this presentation with nothing else, I hope you leave with that, like wear permethrin-treated clothing. There are 3 options. The first option is to spray your stuff at home. I recommend spraying your shoes and gear with the permethrin spray that you can buy. And I recommend option 2 or 3 for your clothing. So option 2 is buying clothing that has already been commercially treated with permethrin. And the reason I recommend this is that this treatment is more effective and can survive 70 wash cycles compared to if you spray your clothes at home, it survives 6 wash cycles. And option number 3 is sending your clothing to a company called Insect Shield, which will apply this commercial treatment to your own clothes. So what I do myself is I tend to buy my socks from Insect Shield and then send my clothes to them. I love this company, but to be clear, I have no financial arrangement with them. And if you use the spray at home, always read the labels and follow the instructions. And if you own a cat, talk to your vet, because when the permethrin is wet, it can be dangerous for your cat. Wear long socks, long pants, long sleeve shirts, light colored clothing so you can see ticks. Tuck your pants into your socks and your shirt into your pants. Tick gaiters. People in the alpha-gal community love these things, especially these limeys ones. They're treated with permethrin, and these limeys gaiters have these little holes that the ticks crawl into, and they come into contact with permethrin and it kills them. My favorite tip is tall boots wrapped with double-sided carpet tape at the top. The Lone Star ticks come after you, they crawl up your boots, and they can't get past that tape, they get stuck in it. I've never had a tick get past my double-sided carpet tape. I use 2 types. I use Trays-On underneath because it peels off a little bit more easily when the time comes to peel the tape off my boot. And YYX Life on top because it's super sticky and I trust it to catch every single tick. Here are ticks that from 3 different species of ticks I caught in the tape on my own boots. So should you use a repellent? Lone Star tick experts are a little mixed on this one. Some say Lone Star ticks drink DEET for breakfast. Others think it's worthwhile, but they all agree you should not rely exclusively on repellents like DEET or Picaridin or some home remedy that the person down your road told you works, because these repellents are not always effective against Lone Star ticks. If you do use a repellent, use the EPA repellent tool to help you find the right one for you. Okay, I'm going to skip these next in the interest of time. And these are really all about where you stand and walk. And for farmers, like, you don't really have a choice. But I want to talk about lint rollers. Carry a lint roller with you because you can use them to roll up larval tick bombs. And if you don't have a lint roller, like, it's really hard to get all these tiny little ticks off, and you're likely to get a bite. And check for ticks frequently. Use the lint roller from time to time to pick up any small ticks you don't see. You'll be amazed what you pick up. Especially before you enter your house or car, run that lint roller over every square inch of your clothing. It really will save you from tick bites. When you get home, do a body check. Remove ticks as soon as possible using proper technique. You don't want to agitate them or squeeze them so that you don't squeeze all that nasty gunk in them into your skin. Get a shower. Put your clothes in the dryer because the heat of the dryer kills ticks. Water doesn't. And if you're bitten, watch for signs of tick-borne disease, because it's not just alpha-gal that these ticks cause. They cause some other really terrible diseases. And remember, if you're watching for alpha-gal, it will usually take weeks or months to develop. Okay, some resources. I put together a page on the alpha-gal information website for farmers and ranchers with alpha-gal syndrome. Alpha-gal information is the most extensive resource on alpha-gal information. If you're interested, you can explore more about it. On this page, I'm going to put these slides, a link to the webinar, and brochures, including one with more tick bites, all the ones we talked about today and more, and also a link to a support group for farmers and ranchers with alpha-gal syndrome. The second QR code is for the two alpha-gals materials website. They have really fabulous tips for living with alpha-gal syndrome. They've got a great mentorship program for people who've been newly diagnosed with alpha-gal to help them figure out like how to cope with it. And they have a wonderful Instagram account that is really fun and full of great tips. And now I will turn things over to the two gals and the farmers. Let's see, got to figure out how to stop sharing this.
Sharon, can we ask just a couple clarifying questions? I did get a few things. Just confirmation that this happens only in humans, or can it happen in other mammals? And I see there is a response, but just to deal with that orally too, do other mammals have the same reaction?
Well, people make antibodies to alpha-gal because we don't have it ourselves. We don't make alpha-gal. It's only some primates, like some monkeys and great apes and humans, who don't make alpha-gal. So like maybe a gorilla can get alpha-gal, but actually wild animals don't develop allergies at all. So it's really just humans.
What role does re-exposure to tick bites play in someone who has already developed AGS? It's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people start off with just maybe they only react to red meat, or maybe their reactions to other things are not so severe. Then they get new tick bites, and then their alpha-gal syndrome gets jacked up to the next level. And that's when they start reacting to like airborne alpha-gal from cooking meat, or start having severe anaphylactic reactions to trace exposures and that kind of thing. So it's super important for us to avoid ticks.
If you do have other questions from the audience, please feel free to put those in the chat. We're going to move into the section I think you're going to find is very interesting. So I will save more question time for the end. Candace and Debbie, please go ahead and take it away.
Thank you so much, Stacy, for inviting us to be a part of this important webinar. And thank you, Sharon, for that spectacular presentation. We were just raving about it as you were going through it, and what good information you provided. I'm Debbie Nichols.
And I'm Candace Mathis.
And we are two Alpha Gals together, and we also have the Alpha Gal Foundation. But today I'm excited to introduce you to a group of farmers who are willing to share their time with us today in this panel. And I'm actually going to let them each introduce themselves briefly. If we could start with Ashton, that would be great.
Hey y'all, my name is Ashton Wheelis. I am an agriculture teacher in Georgia, and I've had alpha-gal for 5 years now.
Daniel?
Hey everybody, I'm Daniel Judkins. I'm also an ag teacher and a cattle producer here in Southeast Virginia, and I've had alpha-gal for 8 years.
How about you, Jen?
My name's Jenna Alcott, and we raise cattle and goats, and most recently emus too, in Northwest Missouri. And I've had alpha-gal for 4 years.
And Clark?
Hi, I'm Clark Giles. I'm from Northeast Oklahoma. Had alpha-gal about 2.5 years. Raised sheep and chickens and turkeys.
And finally, Sonia. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Hi, I'm Sonia, and I'm originally from Florida, but I'm currently living in Kentucky. I had a raw milk herd share, and we also had breeding stock pigs and rabbits. I think I've had alpha-gal for at least 8 years, but I was just diagnosed last year.
Great. Thank you all so much. we're going to dive right in so we can make the best use of this time. And I would love to know what specific things you react to on the farm. And maybe Sonia, you could just get us started. After I ask you to mute and unmute and mute.
Here we go, I think.
Yes.
All right. I'm so sorry. What was the question?
Just if you could share with us some of the specific things that you react to on the farm.
Yes. Specifically, I have a really hard time being around manure. When I was milking my cows, and they had, to use the restroom, I would get heart issues and swelling. Amniotic fluid is another big issue for me. And like Sharon said earlier, blood as well. So there's a lot of different things that can trigger reactions on the farm for me.
Thank you so much for sharing. How about you, Jenna? Do you react to anything in addition to that?
My biggest triggers on our farm would be the manure and amniotic fluids. If fluids get on me, it causes red swelling areas on my body. The manure, it's more of like the fume reaction. Specifically wet manure. When it's dry out, it doesn't tend to bother me as much. But one of my worst reactions to manure was when we were hauling cattle. I wasn't even helping. I was just in the truck, but my husband got in and had so much manure on his work boots that it caused extreme coughing, itchy, watery eyes, to the point where we finally pulled over so he could put his boots in the back of the truck and drive in socks.
Okay. Okay. Ashton, Daniel, Clark, do you guys want to add anything additional that you react to severely on the farm?
Be the same things, amniotic fluid, wet manure. If the barn's pretty fragrant, that's gonna set me off. The one thing nobody's mentioned yet is skunks. I
Yes.
have a terrible time when I get blasted with a skunk. So
Yes, that's a good thing to add. Daniel or Ashton?
I'm pretty similar. I will say when I am, while those are the worst ones, I do sometimes react to just handling. If I touch one of our steers or pigs or anything, blood is a big one for me. When I'm giving injections, or if something scrapes a pig, or I'm tearing apart a fight or something like that, I do react to that as well. But mine are usually like itchy hands. I might get foggy headed, itchy ears really bad, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Okay.
I think for me, amniotic fluid is probably my worst in trying to process newborn calves. Also, just the contact with the animal itself. When I'm working cows or whatever in the chute, itchy hands, get a little bit red. If I touch my face or anything, it goes there as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah. Okay. So I know you guys just shared your pretty severe reactions. Is there anything else you want to add to that, of any, like maybe more of a minor symptom to some of those exposures? Daniel,
say
go ahead, Jenna.
milk replacer is another one for calves when we've made bottles. Just getting it on my hands just causes just mild itching on my hands. Nothing crazy. I can wash it off quick, but that's something that I didn't expect to cause a reaction that definitely does cause something to just a minor extent.
Okay.
And to build off of that one, when you scoop it, it kind of puffs up in your face a little bit if you're not careful. My worst reactions, I didn't even think about this. It's been so long since we've had a bottle calf. Mine is like lungs. Like I cough. I struggle to breathe after that. So that was a good one. I didn't think.
Minor reactions for me start off with like tinnitus, feeling a little bit loopy, a little bit itchy, and then my face will feel really tight from swelling.
Okay. Clark or Daniel? Do you guys know? Okay.
usually the minor ones, my ears would start ringing, and right after that, I'll start getting brain fog pretty bad. Math and reading scores will plummet. So
We understand that.
yeah.
Migraines also are a frequent symptom for me.
I think we did.
Okay. All right. I would love to know, how do you protect yourself from exposure to these things containing alpha-gal? I mean, Sonia, I know you just spoke, you're still off mute if you'd like to jump in. Do you do
Actually
anything to
ended up
protect yourself?
I ended up having to sell my animals because I was just having too many severe reactions to them. But before that, I would wear gloves, long sleeves. I'd wear an N95 mask. I would take a shower as soon as I was done working with them, and that helped to some degree.
Okay. Clark, how about you? What do you do to protect yourself from exposure?
I wear organic vapor cartridge type mask. Uh, dermal contact, I'll wear nitrile gloves. If I'm going to be in the barn very much or around the presence of a lamb being born, rain suit's really good to keep the stuff off your clothes. If I don't have the rain suit on, basically when I come back to the house, I'll go ahead and take my outer garments off, just so I don't bring that stuff in the house. Because I mean, the clothes that have been around that will set me off for a couple hours afterwards. Um, that that's pretty much everything I do. That and I pick my wind days, and, evaluate the moisture levels down there, and that's all kind of goes into the PPE equation. So,
Uh-huh.
but that's about it.
How about you, Ashton?
So I'm actually pretty lucky, though we have livestock on school. I'm not usually by myself with it. My students are really awesome about stepping in. And I think one of the big things is just knowing what you can handle and evaluating those factors. Like he was saying, my students will step in and say, no, let me do it, and then my husband, he doesn't react as bad as I do, though he does have alpha gal. He'll jump in and help me sometimes as well. And so just knowing when you can. I wear gloves. I'll wash my hands right away. Like if I have to do something quick, as long as, sorry, I'm sitting on a bus at a convention, so it's loud. I'm sorry. But as long as I wash my hands pretty quick, I'm okay, kind of. But it depends on the animal and the time. And in the spring, his swings are so much higher because of seasonal allergies. So I know during that time I have to take more precautions.
Yeah.
And I do wear a mask sometimes.
Okay. Daniel?
So for me, when it's cooler outside, I'll wear long sleeves and gloves. During the summertime, if I'm processing calves for any reason, I'll do the shoulder length OB gloves. Then as soon as I'm done, I can peel them off. And I'm also a smaller cattle producer in our area. If I don't have to process a calf right when it's born, I might wait till it dries off a little bit, and that does seem to help just to avoid that amniotic fluid. Not everybody has that luxury. I know most time everybody's busy. But that's, kind of the way that I deal with it. And also washing hands really quick afterwards. Making sure if I do come in contact that I'm not touching anywhere else just to avoid it spreading it.
Yeah, sure. How about you, Jenna?
Luckily for me, I can step back and not have to help with much of the cattle chores since my husband does not have alpha gal. But we also do rotational grazing. So we have a lot of times through the year where the cows are not in a pasture close to our house, which is nice. It gives me a break from even having to be near them. One other thing that we do though, since my husband and kids are around the cows daily, is when they come in with their dirty clothes, I will wash their clothes separate from mine, just because you typically have manure on you somewhere. If you've been riding on a four-wheeler out in the pasture, it gets splattered on everything. So we separate stuff. If I am out there, gloves, upwind from it if possible, just little things, because if you know your triggers, you know how to avoid things that'll set you off.
Yeah,
Very good.
yeah, absolutely. So now we want to move kind of into how this has impacted your business and livelihood. I know you both, or I feel like everyone's kind of touched on it a tiny bit, but we'd love to hear a little bit in more detail. Clark, I'm going to start with you if that's okay. So can you just share how this diagnosis has impacted your livelihood?
I just got done with a couple of weeks of pretty tough lambing. Um, I haven't really been able to work my regular job during that time. I work on water well systems and submersible pumps, that sort of thing, and really haven't been comfortable driving a commercial vehicle. a lot of the effects of this. I mean, boy, you talk about something that'll suck the motivation right out of you. When you get some of these reactions, you know, get the achy joints and brain fog, and it's pretty tough. So I'm in the process now, making a decision whether or not we're going to continue having sheep. That's going to be a big deal. As far as the day job, I don't know about that either. So, but yeah, it's a significant deal. A lot of people aren't as affected by it as much as I am. I'm probably in the upper percentile as far as reactions. I don't have the anaphylaxis all the time like some of the other folks do, but just try to make the best of it.
That's really hard. Thank you for sharing that. Sonia, can I come to you again? Make you unmute.
I'll get it figured out here by the end. I'm sorry.
You're
You're
good.
doing great.
And I'm so sorry again. Can you refresh the question for me?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you just share with us how Alpha-Gal has impacted your business and livelihood as a
Yes,
farmer?
we ended up having to sell all of our dairy cows, our registered pigs, and our rabbits. And we had about 40 different families that were getting raw milk weekly from us. So that was a really rough loss. We ended up switching to poultry, and we'll be expanding more poultry as we can. And that's about it as far as how it affected us. I'm still dealing with some health issues, and hoping that eventually I can get back to like full work on the farm.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. Thank you for sharing that. Jenna, I'm gonna give it to you now.
Really, kind of our biggest changes. We haven't had to do anything drastic since we still have kids at home that can help with chores, but we're a few years away from everybody being gone and in college, and so I'm sure we'll have to reevaluate then. We have part of our cattle operation is that we raise cattle for butcher process, and since I'm not allowed to eat any of the meat we raise, we've added emus and an ostrich to our farm. That way I can still have farm raised meat. So it's been interesting seeing the cattle and the birds get used to each other over the last year, and kind of learning a new side of farming with things that aren't typical to Missouri. So that's been, my kids are in FFA, and I kind of joke, I'm like, you have a very well-rounded farming experience now with large birds on the farm in addition to cows.
Right. Right. I love that. Okay, Daniel.
Yeah, I'll say for me, not a lot has changed since I've been diagnosed. I take the precautions. I'm a 6th generation farmer. So it's once it's in you, it's in your blood. And you know, if it got worse, you know, that may be a consideration to get rid of the livestock. But for right now, no worse than my symptoms are. I just take the right precautions and do what I got to do to make sure it gets done.
Great. And then Ashton.
So as I said, I'm not production, but when I came in, we did not have the livestock that we did, and I've added to it since having Alpha-Gal even. And so I've geared our program towards pigs, just because I can usually touch them and be okay, but I'm avoiding any lamb showing. If we do add it, my middle school teacher will be over it. I will not be able to. But there was a time where I really thought I wouldn't be able to, reacting to even the cooking in the class, food nutrition class, in the hallways and everything. There are definitely days that I am not my best self in my job. Just the foggy headedness and everything, and having to communicate with those around me. And one of the biggest things for me that I think we all have to remember is that you have to be aware of yourself and be very cognizant of your reactions and be willing to step back. We were taught to push through, and sometimes we can do that, and sometimes it is better to step back to protect your health. And so I've had to learn to do that with students. I mean, obviously they're supposed to be hands-on and everything, but there are times where I have to say, hey, I need you to take this. I can't do it. And that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes. But I think that's been a big impact for me as well.
Yeah, but that's such great advice, Ashton. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Was that everybody on that?
Yeah, and sorry, I think I might have to sneeze, so my eye is watering.
One thing that sort of stirred when you guys were talking was I would love to know from each of you really quick, are your reactions delayed or immediate? Like, the typical alpha-gal reaction is often delayed. So if you could just go around and mention if it's delayed or immediate for you. Daniel, do you want to start?
Well, so from the farm source, it's pretty right then and there. I also, and I didn't mention this earlier, but from the ingestion side of it, I suffer from both sides of the spectrum. I will go into anaphylaxis, and I also have the upset stomach from it. That is very delayed, 4 to 6 hours usually for me.
Okay. How about you, Jenna? Delayed or immediate? And please feel free to add anything else about your reactions to it.
Very similar to Daniel. If I eat something, it is about 4 hours, and it is anaphylaxis and or GI symptoms. Farm exposures are different. Those are immediate for me. Those typically are more respiratory, itchy, watery eyes, itchy skin. A little bit of the brain fog thing that other people have talked about. And that's why I really think that knowing your symptoms is important and what the triggers are, because since the farm reactions are so quick, I can tell when my eyes start itching that we're building up to something bigger. And so that kind of is my key to, okay, step away, take a break, go do something else, have somebody else do it. So just knowing really what your first little symptoms are is very important.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. How about you, Ashton? Delayed, immediate, anything else you want to share about what your reactions look like?
Of course. Mine are pretty, I'm so sorry, there were buses. Mine are pretty immediate. Even with food, I'll notice my ears start itching very quickly. And maybe it's just because I like suspect that something's happening, but around livestock, almost immediate, just going in there, or if I'm around it for a long time. But the symptoms can last, like especially my achy joints and foggy headedness, sometimes they last a week, just depending on how much I was in. So like states show it's a lot more. But even eating is pretty quick.
Okay. All right. How about you, Clark? Delayed, immediate, anything else you want to add?
The food reactions, I haven't had one in so long that I don't really remember. Those are usually delayed when I did have them. The stuff I struggle with now is like right now. As soon as I get exposed to it, I'll start getting the ringing ears and the brain fog. I can usually walk in a customer's house and tell within about a minute if they've got a dog in there or if they use like Glade plug-ins. So it's a very immediate reaction on the fume side.
Okay. Yes. And Sonia?
So yeah, like everybody else, my food reactions are delayed, and then animal exposures are more immediate. I was one of those people that had very mild symptoms for a very long time, and I kind of brushed it under the rug that it was something else. Migraines, GI issues, and then as I got bit by more ticks, my reactions progressively got worse and worse to the point where I was having cardiac symptoms every time I was around my cows.
Wow.
And it was definitely very quick, and I've tried to stay away from livestock, but recently I had some exposures last weekend and about 2 weeks ago, and it was definitely very fast, and I am still having issues almost a week later.
Oh, yeah. Thank you all for sharing that. There is this sliding scale, if you will, of severity of reactions. Okay, so the last question, what do you wish other farmers and ranchers knew about alpha-gal syndrome? Daniel, I'm going to start with you if that's okay.
Fine, that's fine. I would say know your limits. Know how much exposure that you can take. Don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it, if you need to step away for a second. I know me personally, and I know a lot of other farmers and ranchers that are just like me, that we don't like to ask for help. We like to do it all ourselves. So I would say have that support network with you, that if you can't do what you need to do, that you have some backup there to be able to help you do it.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. Thank you. Jenna, how about you?
I would say just awareness. I think there's a lot of people that are unaware of alpha-gal in general. And if you're having mild symptoms and just itching and maybe stomach issues when you do eat mammal, you might not even realize that you have an allergy in the first place. And something that I just think more awareness would be great. Also, like Daniel said, a good support system too, which I do have. So I'm lucky there. And just take preventative measures and use precautions. Be smart with it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. How about you, Sonia?
Just basically what everyone else is saying. Just be careful, know what the signs and symptoms are, and go get tested if you think that you're having issues, and that it's okay to, switch to something else if you need to. It was really hard to give up my cows, which is what my passion was. But it's necessary sometimes for your health just to take a step back and try something new.
Love that. Awesome. How about you, Clark?
Daniel gave an excellent answer. You need to pick your battles, find out what triggers you, and then everything you do around your triggers, be it sheep or whatever, you have to basically make a risk reward calculation on what you can do and get through it. I take care of the sheep all the time, but when they're starting to lamb, the other night we had a rough one, and I caught it maybe an hour in, and I wanted to jump in and help, but I was down there by myself without a phone, and if I get a really good dose of it, my blood pressure will start dropping and things might get bad. So I went back up to the house and got my wife and my daughter-in-law, and they came down there and took care of it. Well, I had to basically stand back and watch. But know what you can do, know what you can't do. The stuff you can't do, find somebody that will help you. Because if you jump in and you get overwhelmed with alpha-gal and you start having anaphylaxis, you can't get to a doctor, then you're going to be in big trouble.
Absolutely. Thanks, Clark. All right, Ashton, how about you?
I wanted to just say that if you are newly diagnosed, you will figure it out. I felt hopeless. I felt like I was going to have to give up everything for a long time. And even if you don't go into remission, or you don't, your severity doesn't, ease back a little bit, you're going to figure it out. And there are ways to work with it, but like we've said before, step back if you need to, but it does get better.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. All right, so thank you all so much for taking time out of your very busy schedules with field trips, with work, all of the things. So we really appreciate your sharing your experience and your vulnerability. And we wish you all nothing but the best, with your health and everything. So, and thank you, Stacy, for allowing us to have this panel. I think we could have talked for an entire hour with everyone.
It makes it real when you hear the stories of how all of you have had to make changes, make choices, and it really has had an impact on the way you can continue to do your work. And we know our farms and ranches cross over with home a lot. Like thinking about washing clothes and how that is such a, it's something you do at home, but it's definitely impacted by your work and something that happens every day. It does have lots of consequences that you wouldn't think about until you start peeling back those layers and exploring more of it. I want to just say to our audience today, thank you very much for participating. I know we're getting to the hour. Don't feel bad if you need to leave. We appreciate whatever participation you can give us. So thank you for joining in today. If there are any of you who want to stick around for a few minutes, we can stay and answer a few more questions if you'd like. There's something, you can always reach out to us individually, separately, and I'm happy to connect you with our colleagues today if there's something more you want to follow up on. I know both organizations have some really great websites with fabulous information, and I hope all of you are seeing the positive feedback in the chat. People are really appreciated you sharing your stories. And there are some questions I think we've covered some of these things even in the interim time from when the questions came in, so I don't want to go through every single one. There was a question about whether or not you felt like heat made your symptoms more severe. Does anybody have any experience with that?
Yes, I do.
You feel like in the summertime it's harder, or if you're
Oh, it's much harder, but I also have additional histamine issues that were brought out around the same time that I was developed alpha-gal. And I think it may be more related to that than the actual alpha-gal. And it's the same thing with seasonal allergies. Anything that triggers a sensitivity in your body can overreact to it. And sun and heat and humidity is definitely one of those triggers for me.
public health perspective, we'd encourage you to wear the right clothing if you're going to be out in the sun, and try to find some shade if you're going to be working, all those kinds of things. But knowing that makes it harder for alpha-gal to be in the sun maybe is another reason to make sure you have your sun hat on and protecting your skin while you're working too. Are there any other questions, Sharon, that you want to respond to? I know you've been looking at the chat while we're doing this.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's a really important question, can alpha-gal syndrome go away? And, our beloved expert, Scott Cummins, says that about 12% of his patients actually have their alpha-gal go into remission. And this is much more likely to happen if you avoid tick bites. If you don't avoid tick bites, the ticks are going to constantly recharge your alpha-gal. And another important thing to understand is that we don't say you're cured, we say you're in remission, because your alpha-gal can return, in particular if you get new tick bites. But remember, half the time you don't even know it, and other people just say their alpha-gal came back and they don't know why. And the famous writer John Grisham and his wife both have alpha-gal, and you can find his story about how his alpha-gal went away and he started eating meat again. And, then he was in Paris and he had a reaction and didn't want to go to the hospital in Paris. So yeah, it's important to understand both those things.